So with all my research on trauma and nervous system regulation, I realized when you have a person or a support team that has your back, is in your corner, so you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel understood, and you feel validated. It will give you the strength to carry on and find the solutions that work for you. When you feel like you can be who you are, you don't have to mask and pretend to be someone else. When you have the permission to be you, or also when you have the necessary support, it will also give you permission to actually go seek the person that is hidden underneath all the debris of masking. And you can finally find who you really are. Tanya Marshall is talking about that, how important it is to support the strengths of women with autism. And unfortunately, in Switzerland, we still have this deficit model.
Many of the women and females and girls are not being supported. They're not being understood, first of all. They're being misdiagnosed, and they're also being put on medications that aren't based on those diagnoses, that aren't helpful, and that a lot of times are not supportive. And also there isn't the awareness from professionals, so psychologists or psychiatrists have an understanding that Asperger's is how it presents in males. So when a female presents, then she can't have Asperger's if she's making eye contact, or if she's having a superficial conversation, or if she's showing some appropriate body language, because, you know, she's taught herself to do that, and she's copied and mimicked her peers. So she knows how to do that. But if you dig a little deeper, then you can find out that she's got some social skills problems, and she's got some anxiety, and she's really trying hard on a day-to-day basis just to get through the day.
So this is the local autism site, and for sure you find a lot of information on here. But if you don't know where to look for, you just don't find it. And only recently, as I scrolled and scrolled through all this information, I actually found something that was really helpful. And Lea Gerstenkorn is a lady who is autistic herself, and she is helping other autistics, and she has a lot of knowledge. So I read through her whole masterwork from 2016, where she writes about work and autism. So I had to go through all of that. And this is Work and Health on page 26. It is so well written that I copied it. But especially in Switzerland, it is so important to have work, and then you get the social recognition and also financial independence, of course. But then she writes, it is very different if you can decide for yourself that you don't want to work so much, or if because of some form of disability you are forced to work less than 100%. And especially with invisible disability, people will not necessarily understand why you can't work that much if they don't know about the sensory overload issues, stress and anxiety that autistics have to deal with on a daily basis. And therefore, many autistics actually have a very good education, but because of this sensory issue, they do some work that is not on their level of education. So you try to perform as neurotypical, but because you are autistic, you just can't. And then there is always that emotional and physical exertion that can lead to disease later on. Even though as autistic you may be interested in other people, you still need to take more breaks and have solitude in order to recover your system. If you don't have that, yeah, the meltdowns and shutdowns are the result. So this is painful for not being able to perform the way you want to perform, to have that pressure and not being understood. They see you as a difficult worker, not motivated. For such a long time, I really didn't know I was autistic, and I was struggling. I felt stressed. I had all that anxiety, especially during apprenticeship. I was so afraid of the pharmacist. She would get so angry if I made a mistake or if I didn't know something. And this made everything so much worse. And then I was afraid to serve the customers. It was like performance anxiety on top of everything else. I was so shy, and then when I feel stressed, to this day, I tend to have selective mutism, and then I cannot answer a question even though I know the answer. There is just blackout, nothing. And this has been going on for years and years. And finally, now that I know I am autistic, it was still so difficult. How do I tell my boss? And before that, I felt so stressed during work, especially when they changed things. I got so stressed from all those changes. You are used to do one thing like that, you have a routine, and then suddenly you are forced to do it in a different way because the company wants it so. Yeah, it's not been easy. I have survived, but struggled, and again I almost run into a burnout. And the lockdown actually saved me, both the first and now the second. And wearing masks has added to all that stress. It's so complicated. If you have, in addition to autism, some autoimmune issue too. So for me, wearing a mask is sensory-wise challenging. I can bear it for maybe 1-2 minutes maximum. And then the stress starts building up and I get so angry. And this is the sensory part. But then I have this heat intolerance. So this is not only in summertime, but exercise intolerance, hot tubs, saunas, and the mask wearing. I get something like a allergic reaction to mask wearing from the heat on my face. So my mast cells will then release histamine, and then I get all the histamine symptoms in addition to sensory overload. So mask wearing is absolute torture for me, and I was so lucky to get a doctor's exempt. But at work I still have to wear the mask to serve the customers, and when I'm back in the kitchen I just pull it off my face very quickly. And that was the only possible way to continue working in this COVID craziness. Very stressful. I finally found confirmation of what I am going through at work. So the mental overload, excessive demands, even the temperature at work can be an issue. For me it is. As soon as it is too warm, I suffer. The lightning, the noises, this is a real issue. And then where I work in the restaurant train, it is very narrow. So when there is another person, I feel stressed when they come too close. Then you have customers or co-workers that wear aftershave or perfume, and that's extremely hard to tolerate. And then if your superiors don't know that you are autistic, and recently I have outed myself because the last feedback wasn't so good. Again, they told me I was not motivated and I had too many no's, but this is just because of sensory overload. That's why I say no, because I'm too stressed. And if they don't know that you are autistic, it's a problem. And then the working hours is an issue too, because it's irregular, sometimes morning shift, sometimes evening shift. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, well, that's very hard for me. I'm not a morning person. And then we have different restaurant train types. And there is one train that has 16 tables instead of 7. And for me, that's undoable. I get so stressed out. I miss new customers because I don't see them coming. I don't see them leaving. I have minor prosopagnosia, so that means I just don't see the customers really. I can mistake a customer that is sitting at the same table and then think, oh, he has already paid, and then not serve him because I assume that this is a customer that I have already served. It can happen when I'm stressed, when I have a restaurant train where you serve so many tables. For me, it's impossible. I try to tell them, and they just see it as she is not able to work all restaurant trains. So now that I'm outed as autistic, hopefully we'll have some adjustments. So as we have lockdown and all the restaurants in Switzerland are still closed, it is actually a blessing, and my nervous system could so well recover from work, not having to go to work every day. It's amazing what that does to my nervous system. However, my company then decided that we should suddenly do exercise at 8 o'clock in the morning. I think they meant to create some structure for us workers, but I have my own structure and routine as an autistic. So this caused a tremendous amount of stress. In fact, That stress, same as exercise, led to histamine release. That demand by my company to exercise at 8 o'clock in the morning every day, for me who has really trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, it was too much pressure. And therefore, the stress and the histamine that was released caused all those bloody symptoms. I felt drained. I had muscular pain in my legs and arms and lower back, and I had a 3-day migraine on the right side and then a 3-day migraine on the left side, and I had massive anxiety, and my digestion was upset, and I felt brain fogged. So just the stress from the demand of my company caused all of that. So I had to defend myself. I had to write an email to my superior explaining my exercise intolerance. And then I had to call my doctor for exercise exempt. And this was just the demand that caused all that unnecessary stress. During lockdown, not even during work.
But my motto is be yourself, right? And you can be yourself by finding out what your strengths are, not trying to be like other neurotypicals, and having mentors and family members and caretakers support and nurture your strengths and gifts.
This is the second part of the autism evaluation. It's been a while since I did the first part, where I just talked about the first meeting I had with the woman who did the assessment. And since then, I have learned a lot more about nervous system regulation, and I love the approach by experts like Stephen Porges, Peter Levine, who is the founder of Somatic Experience, Pat Ogden, who is the founder of Sensory Motor Psychotherapy. And then there is Deb Dana, who has focused on the polyvagal approach. I think it is very, very important to include the nervous system. And the problem is when you meet a therapist who doesn't know about this, and then you just feel unsettled, stressed by the sheer presence of that therapist. You don't feel seen, you don't feel heard. You just feel you are a diagnosis sitting in the room. You don't feel seen as human. So this is especially true for the person that diagnosed me. So the only external resource that people have that's even halfway safe is the therapist's nervous system, right? So you need to feel safe. I think especially as autistic, you need to feel safe. Otherwise, you feel stressed. So what therapists do a lot is, I think, they underestimate the impact of their nervous system on the client's nervous system. So they assume that everything that they say is what will help the client. And they may even mean it well. But in actuality, your nervous system is what helps the client either lean in or recoil from. And with that person who evaluated me, I went into flight, and then I couldn't get away, so I went into freeze, and later on, when I was by myself, I went into massive fight response. So your nervous system is actually teaching when you are a therapist, even if you're not saying a word. And so many times therapists can't calibrate their nervous system. What they can do is they can give a lot of good advice. They can say a lot of things, but their nervous system is sending the message that they are themselves unsettled. And Ian McGilchrist has described this in his book, The Master and His Emissary. And he talked about the left brain approach versus the right brain approach. And it should be balanced. So if you feel you are put into boxes by a therapist, you don't feel so well. And the lady who recommended me to go for diagnosis, she is a person who has so much warmth and heart, and she sees you as human being. And she loves autistics, and you can just feel that, and then your nervous system automatically relaxes. She doesn't even need to say anything. This lady who as first person told me that I was autistic, not diagnosing me. She's a counselor, not a person who does diagnosis. But she just welcomed me into the world of autistics as a neurotypical but very warm-hearted person. And she is an author, and this is the quote she included in her book, The Little Prince. "It's only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential cannot be seen with the eyes." And that's her book. She is married to an Aspie. And I just want to express my gratitude for everything. Since we have met, all the understanding that she, as one of very few people, has given me. And I cherish that with all my heart. It is just what her nervous system is sending over. It will totally make your nervous system relax and feel safe and at ease. No danger. So it was such a massive shock to then come to a place that supposedly knows about autism. Of course, they do those diagnoses, yes, but it was such a radical difference coming from this kind lady where you feel accepted and treated as a human being, and then you are suddenly in an environment where everything is so clinical and cold. And I can tell you, this woman who claims to be an autism expert and who has a lot of power, she definitely does not know about nervous system regulation. And she triggered me again and again and again. Her medical arrogance, basically seeing me as the diagnosis, looking at me through this lens of the autisms and not seeing all the rest. It was really very, very stressful, and at first it caused shame and freeze, and then it caused fight, and I was stuck. So the problem was there was a lack of transparency. All I knew that I would have those meetings. One was with that psychologist who did the assessment. Second time I had to watch a video and answer questions and then do a lot of questionnaires. And then the third time we met, it was with the psychiatrist. In addition, they did a final test where I was supposed to tell a story from looking at pictures in a book, and I could not do it. I went into freeze. I started trembling, and then I had to leave the room to calm down. Then I came back to the room, and then they put another book in front of me. And again, I could not say a word. I just didn't have any clue what to say to these pictures. no idea. And I was also additionally stressed by two people in the room, that psychologist that I don't feel comfortable with, and then the psychiatrist. That somehow I had really trouble to understand him. Probably it was the acoustic in the room, I'm not sure, but I really had a hard time understanding what he was saying. But anyway, I was still told after that very unsuccessful last test that I indeed was diagnosed with Asperger's autism, and then I was told that they would send the report sometime later as soon as it was finished. And then I got an envelope with book recommendations and different links for autism support, and that was it. And then I was sent on my way. No further support. I had no idea that they would diagnose me with some other diagnosis. They didn't tell me that. No transparency. And I also found that I wasn't even questioned. Additionally, I had requested to be tested for PTSD, PDA, and they said they would somehow include that in the report or something. But I wasn't questioned. I had no questionnaires regarding PTSD. Nothing. And no questionnaires about anything else than autism. I just want to say that. So this woman, she threw a diagnosis onto me that wasn't accurate. In fact, it was extremely shaming, humiliating, and completely invalidating all my efforts and my solutions that I had discovered for myself to operate properly. And this is extremely unprofessional. So, first it caused this reaction, and I was almost in a catatonic state, just doing nothing, not capable of really finding new solutions. It just pulled the rug under my feet. So right now I'm reading this book by Amita Shah about catatonia, thanks to the recommendations of Dr. Linda. That was the feeling that false diagnosis did to me. And so, at some point, I felt so fucking angry. Really extreme rage. And then I was in this phase, which is actually better because you come out of that freeze. But then I was stuck in the fight response. which is extremely exhausting if it is going on for weeks and weeks and you cannot calm down because you feel so much rage. And I actually took some somatic experience sessions to calm down. You cannot function if you are stuck in fight. It's exhausting. And then I decided I would fight this false diagnosis. I would fight it and I would not accept it because it was humiliating, it was completely invalidating to my very core. It was shaming. It was not right. I could not accept it. And I didn't. I still cannot understand how you can get so thoroughly misdiagnosed. Because of course I looked it up and this diagnosis just really didn't apply to me at all. And I wasn't ever questioned about this. All I did was sharing my passion and talking about the solutions I had found. And I also wanted to have validation in my report for the trauma I have experienced because it's quite a lot of trauma. And from what I have learned and observed in myself, this for sure is not just autism, but also PTSD, CPTSD. The support I would have needed or the recommendations it should have been about trauma support or somebody who knows about trauma from having been in a cult. This is a different trauma because you get so brainwashed and it does stuff to you that can still be present after many years. I have been in a cult for 10 years, okay? So I had to start all over again when I left. And that was hard enough. And I just dealt with it in an autistic way without knowing I was autistic. So, but they recommended to me at this autism evaluation was something that I really didn't need. I had already found solutions. If you have food allergies, you leave out the trigger foods. As simple as that. Right? Common sense. But they just threw this stupid fucking wrong diagnosis onto me and didn't diagnose me for things that are clearly present. So I was really disgruntled and frustrated It's sad for being so misunderstood, and it woke the tiger in me, and I requested another meeting. And then I wrote them again and again until they gave me another session. And then I talked about all the traumas that I had, from developmental trauma, trauma at school, trauma during the relationship, and then the trauma from the cult. All of those caused PTSD, CPTSD. But again, this damn expert, she just did not want to see it. She agreed to delete this false diagnosis, that she did, but she was not ready to diagnose me with CPTSD. Again, it felt invalidating, not seeing me, not seeing what had happened to me. And this is so bad for a place, a university, who calls themselves experts on autism. How can they be so behind? And I am not just saying this, I actually have evidence. So in my journey, getting to know myself, mapping myself out as autistic, Carol Bird has this great YouTube channel called Mindful Divergence. Check it out if you like. So yesterday we had this live stream chat.
You guys are hilarious, for sure. If you think that you could be autistic, I have a whole playlist of Aspie quizzes that you can take, that some of them specifically differentiate between having like anxiety kind of disorders and autism. But if you get really high scores in the autism quizzes, then it's more likely that you're autistic, and one of those traits is being socially anxious. I can't think of one friend that I have that's on the spectrum that isn't socially anxious and doesn't have like some type of anxiety that way. It's very, very normal. Like for me to even be able to do these live streams, I have to have like alcohol or something to make it that I can shut down the part of my brain that feels like all of that anxiety. A huge blockade. Actually, Nana, for me, if I get the huge blockade feeling, that's actually when I'm full in shutdown, not an anxiety. For me, shutdown is more like I can't communicate with my body at all. Like my brain can, to a degree. I did a video that's going to come up within the next week or so on this shutdown. But what you're describing feels more like shutdown to me. Shutdown can happen because of anxiety, though. And I noticed that a lot of people within the autism spectrum that try to do things in their day-to-day life a little bit outside of their abilities, they use like alcohol or edibles or something to make it that they can function.
Yep.
And
the tropics, for example.
So I'm learning a little bit more about that this last year, about how addictions are a really big part of autism, just to deal with the aspect of the phobias and the social anxiety.
Yep.
It's a really big part of it.
It's Such a great channel. And I have since then befriended Carol Birch, and we joke about it that I moved to Canada, where everything is so much better regarding diagnosis, and then I would be re-evaluated. I am also in Carol Birch's Autism Village Facebook group, and this is the only group I still feel comfortable to be part of. Nothing fanatic, very open-minded. We are a global networking portal that seeks to revolutionize the quality of life for those on the spectrum through building a local sense of belonging and purpose within its members. We at ASD Village are pioneers that build bridges between autistic individuals and families across the globe. Corporately, we believe that 1. Weird is cool, and it is what we do best. 2. Together we are beautiful. 3. Hearts set on fire, full greatness in the world. 4. Our obsessions make us an unstoppable force. 5. Where heroes are conceived, miracles are born. We are those heroes. 6. Autism is not our mountain to climb. It is our magical stepping stone to reaching unimaginable greatness. ASD Village has been built out of necessity and passion by Aspies for Aspies. ASD Village is where obsessions collide with purpose, passion, vision, and service, because we believe when it is all said and done, each of us are hungry for a place to call home. Exhale. Welcome home. This is what Carol has as description in her videos. My name is Carol, I am an autistic and I have always struggled with extreme neurodiversity. And why I'm sharing this, Carol got additional diagnoses, a lot, very thoroughly. So she writes, my main differences are extreme visual thinking, I have that too, photographic memory, various forms of synesthesia, alexithymia, dyslexia, PTSD and CPTSD, they tested all that. Various detachment and dissociative impairments, impaired ability in connecting, attaching to people and animals. They tested that as well. Physically, my greatest issues are EDS and POTS, as is common within the autistic community. So all I got is Asperger's autism. That's it. And I have to find out everything by myself by doing all that research. I don't mind. I really love reading up on different topics and making videos about it. I have 3 different YouTube channels. One is about autism, nutrition, trauma, carnivory. One is about all things cults, and one is about psychology, neuroscience, neurobiology, psychotherapy, PTSD, addiction, and such. And making those videos in the beginning, I was extremely shy to even talk or read. And making those videos turned out to be a type of self-imposed speech therapy. And I have become much more fluent in reading or talking. Also, I have become more confident. I still prefer talking to pictures instead of being in front of the camera, but I think at some point I will also be doing that. So I love to do research on that, and by chance I just happen to understand where I stand in all of this. So I have autoimmune issues as well, and therefore I eat in a certain way so I can function better. Donna Williams is calling that dietary disability, which I find is a very good term for it. And she talks about taking straws off the camel's back. Makes a lot of sense, right? So yesterday this came up. People talked about IQ and their way of being assessed. And I realized I didn't know what my IQ was even.
Interesting, actually, the prevalence of autism in the UK is really high. Like, really, really high compared to Canada. I haven't quite sorted out... No, that's not true. I haven't looked into why that is yet, but I find it very interesting. The prevalence of autism in the UK is very high in comparison to like Canada and the US. I really want to go to Scotland. Christy, I really want to go to Scotland.
Yeah, we share that.
Scotland, Ireland, England.
All of it.
But England is the one that's on my bucket list.
Yep.
But the thing is, I thought about, okay, if I go to England and I start getting like homesick, then at least I did my bucket list thing. But if I don't get homesick when I get to England, then I want to do like Ireland and Scotland if I can when I'm out in the UK.
Yep,
everything. But now with COVID, that's making it, hoping within the next year, if it's not mandated for travel to have the vaccine and stuff, then I'd like to go over to the UK. Oh yeah, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, all of those, but most of all Scotland. I liked Edinburgh a lot. Karina, you been to Scotland? What the heck? I didn't know about this. This is new information. Okay, Amanda. The reason the UK has a large number of autistics is because they are way ahead in diagnosing their adults. They also have a great national autism website. I didn't know that. Wow. I didn't know anything about that. That is really good information to have. Okay, Karina, what are you saying here? Brits are also proud to be eccentric. It's a strength when you collect toilet brushes, according to Dolly Atwood. He said UK is the land of the ass. Yeah, UK is the land of the Aspies. I have so many friends in the UK that are Aspies. It's definitely true. Wait until lockdowns are lifted. Man, I can't freaking wait until they're lifted. I got so many things I want to do and places I want to go and stuff to do. Okay, autistic meat-loving hermit. Just so you guys know, that's my friend Karina. Wow, it's amazing how thoroughly you get tested in Canada. Amazing. Here in Switzerland, we are really in Stone Age in regards to diagnosis. That's why I got so mad and felt traumatized. You guys are like a decade behind in Switzerland. Roughly, yeah. If you can go through the process online, but I know you already got like all of that stuff done, but yeah.
I wasn't assessed the same way as people are in Canada or the UK. Switzerland is lacking behind in so many ways.
Marina, in Switzerland, they don't test IQ, so have no idea of what the heck? How do they give you an autism diagnosis without testing IQ? I don't even know what to say to that. I'm lost. I thought that the DSM was kind of like universal as part of this process, but wow. Okay, this is making sense now. This is making sense. Because you had mentioned to me about the PTSD, that they're not really on the ball with that either. It sounds like to me they're really, really behind the times. Let's just say that over in Switzerland. And I don't think chocolate's gonna save them. Okay, I'm being a smartass, I'm sorry.
And then, of course, if you don't have this thorough assessment of your special needs as autistic and trauma survivor and everything else, then you have no idea where to seek help. You have nothing. So you see, I read Sarah Hendricks' book about female autism, and because of her, I went for diagnosis in the first place. This is such a great book. It really made me understand that I was autistic. Because before, I went to a psychiatrist in Switzerland who was on that list of people who do diagnose. But this psychiatrist, she was completely unaware of female autism, and she said, "Oh, you did that, you make eye contact, you knew how to answer that, so you are not autistic, period." And after I read Sarah Hendricks' book and also watched all her presentations on YouTube, I decided to go for another try. And it's a lot of money. It's 1,700 Swiss francs. And insurance does not pay that. So when this university in the capital of Switzerland was recommended to me for autism diagnosis, I trusted it because I trusted the person, and I still do. But now I actually feel betrayed by that university and their way of evaluating autism. There is a lack of everything. You get very little for paying so much money. In comparison, you have Axia ASD, in the UK. So the diagnostic procedure is completely different and way more detailed. For adults assessed by our service, we ensure all aspects of the specialist neurodevelopmental assessment are discussed and inform individuals of support available locally, charities, and of our monthly post-diagnostic support group. In Switzerland, you just have to do everything yourself, and there is no support at all. All I got after the evaluation was finished was an envelope with a list of autism books and some explanations from the local autism support, and that was it. No further assessment about learning disabilities or ear lenses or trauma support, nothing. That's deplorable. In comparison, the diagnostic procedure followed by AXIA ASD, completion of questionnaire, liaison with AXIA ASD admin team, and client family for any further information required and support through diagnostic process. 2-hour interview assessment with the diagnostician, client and client's family. Fully detailed assessment report after assessment has taken place, with copies sent to relevant health professionals, GP and client, and any other person requested to have sight of report. Our diagnostic reports also include, here it comes, recommendation for further investigations, forward referrals, for example, assessment for Ehrlich syndrome. This is the special tinted lenses you get. When you have visual stress, when you are very sensitive to light, those tinted lenses can actually sometimes really make a big difference, so your brain has less trouble with reading or bright light and stuff like that. And then they do even genetic testing. I think this is because of MTHFR gene mutations. Basically, every autistic has those. And when you have this genetic makeup, you know what supplements to take. So this is really a big help if you have that already. And then they give you recommendations for further support, psychoeducation or psychological intervention. You get all that during the basic diagnostic procedure. Amazing. And then you get also book recommendations, leaflets, coping strategies, websites, forums, and signposts to local support services, charities, and our monthly post-diagnostic support group. That's amazing. I didn't get any of that in Switzerland. Again, I feel betrayed for getting so little support. You get diagnosed and then they basically kick you out to be on your way. And then what? You are all alone, back in the mud, struggling. So I am really quite triggered now. And I'm also feeling sad because this struggle is really so hard and you have to do everything by yourself. Not getting anywhere. So at Axia they have post-diagnostic support. The ethos of Axia ASD is working in partnership, which is fundamental to all of our work, including our post-diagnostic and ongoing psychological intervention. Again, in Switzerland you don't get that, you just get kicked out. Just the diagnosis in hand, but no idea what to do with it or where to turn to. Our post-diagnostic sessions focus on the impact of the diagnosis, and we know that many individuals appear to have to relive their lives, going through key events and viewing them in the light of now being someone with an autism spectrum disorder. As a service, we have come to realize the adjustment process is much more complicated, longer and more painful than we had at first realized. We have also become increasingly aware of the impact on immediate and wider family members, both in relation to their response to the family member's diagnosis and in reflecting on their own lives. So everybody is included. We allow the person to tell their story in a relationship that acknowledges they are the experts in their own lives and they bring enormous strengths. See? This is completely different. You are not being seen as a diagnosis, but as a human being. Ongoing psychological intervention acknowledges that all behavior observed is seen as meaningful communication, an acknowledgement that the world can be a confusing and at times frightening place for the individual. Axia ASD Ltd works to gain an empathic understanding as to how the individual views their world, including, for example, any sensory sensitivities. And in addition to the innovative and market-leading diagnostic services we already have available, we are excited to be increasing our range of post-diagnostic support. That's so wonderful. I would move to the UK just for that. Having another evaluation and additional assessment. So, we may offer you help with individualizing your reasonable adjustment document for school, college, your workplace. That's so helpful. I would love to have something like this. Assisting you in your personal independence payment, applications or appeals. Advising you with education and healthcare plans. Wow! This may be via a range of additional assessments, for example, cognitive assessment with a clinical psychologist, speech and language assessment, occupational therapy assessment, sensory integration assessment, psychotherapy assessment, learning disability assessment. We can offer some of these assessments via Skype. Depending on the outcome of the assessment, you may also wish to opt for ongoing help, support and intervention, for example, occupational therapy intervention, ongoing speech and language therapy intervention, sensory integration strategies, psychological and psychotherapeutic work for individuals, couples and families. That's amazing! I get homesick all over again. Whenever I visit the UK's, I feel so at home. And when I have to leave, I really feel so sad. And I feel this pull to go to the UK's and even live there. Well, when this COVID craze is over, who knows, maybe this still can happen. You see, when you get the support you need, it really gives you wings. I for sure know that because I was extremely criticized by my dad. This is one of the traumas. And he just never offered a solution. He just criticized. And because I didn't know that I was autistic, I just felt like a failure. And I didn't know how to do it in a different way. So I am one of those lost generation autistics. No support by parents, no support in school. Yeah, story of my life. I was very lucky. I was referred to this craniosacral therapist. She also knows about trauma and she knows about autism. This is such a rare combination, and I'm so glad that I can work with her on the trauma side. This is really a blessing to work with her. And she also does the Stephen Porges Safe and Sound protocol and is very, very nervous system oriented. So I am really happy to work with her. And secondly, I also work with Lea Gerstenkorn, who knows so much about autism. She is autistic herself, and it's invaluable support and advice, especially when you are such a newbie in the autistic field. not knowing what is what, where to get support, what to do, all of that. She gives awesome advice. I sure regard myself as autistic hermit. I need that solitude. I recharge in solitude and silence. It's a physical need. My system can't go on and on without solitude. It's impossible. Last time I tried that in 2007, I had that burnout, and from there on it was very difficult to recover, and I have not really recovered. I still have that histamine intolerance, mast cell activation stuff going on, exercise intolerance, and things I'm trying to bring back into balance. But also very important is for every autistic to have a support team. I now have 3.5 people that I really am connected on a regular basis, and I totally am dependent on that for their experience and support and nervous system regulation and healing of trauma, just all of it. And it was so hard to struggle all alone. When you have support, you are so much stronger. So from my own experience, I can clearly say support, help, guidance, assistance, advice, tips are like Red Bull. It gives wings to you.